A week before the apocalypse, in order to avoid my mom, I planned a 6-month road trip in an RV for myself. But the sudden arrival of the apocalypse instantly turned my originally leisurely trip into a perilous escape for survival. A month ago, my mom, whom I hadn't seen in over 20 years, asked me to give her the house I had fully paid for, all for the sake of her just-turned-18 son. To achieve this, she didn't hesitate to make a scene like a shrew at my workplace, successfully getting me fired. I don't feel any blood ties or familial affection toward her, but I also don't want my future to be entangled with her in any way. So I simply sold the house and drove my RV out of that fast-paced city to escape. Driving southbound on the highway, I had no idea how long I'd been on the road. The sky was getting darker, the rain heavier, and more large trucks were pulling over onto the emergency lane. I pulled into a service area 2 kilometers away and parked. Braving the rain, I ran into the main hall, grabbed a few skewers of Odin at random, then bought a few meat zongzi from a nearby store. After that, I went to the convenience store, picked out 2 self-heating hot pots, some packs of biscuits and chips, and an umbrella. I also asked the clerk for a case of coffee and 2 cases of mineral water, and asked him to help me carry everything to my car. There weren't many customers in the store, so after ringing up my purchases, the clerk readily agreed to help. After loading everything into the car, I put the zongzi in the car fridge, set up the self-heating hot pot, and started absent-mindedly eating Odin while watching videos. A scene from a zombie movie flashed by, then switched to a video about mushroom foraging. Since I lingered on the mushroom foraging videos, the algorithm kept recommending me more related content. Watching the bubbling mushroom hot pot, I made up my mind about the destination for this trip. I glanced out the window, the rain hadn't let up at all. This reminded me of that big flood in the north many years ago, which also seemed to have started with a heavy rain on a hot day like this. It wasn't a good feeling. I was driving alone on the highway, and it would be a real hassle if I ran into a road closure. I dashed into the convenience store with my umbrella, and bought 2 more boxes of self-heating hot pot, 2 boxes of water, a few bags of soft bread, and a case of 8 treasure porridge. The guy on duty was the same one as before. He wasn't very talkative, but after ringing up my purchases, he took the initiative to help me carry everything to my car. It was only as I was leaving that he said something. "Don't worry, they probably won't close the road. I just checked the weather forecast. There won't be any rain tomorrow." I thanked him and closed the car door. No matter what the weather is like tomorrow, I'll most likely have to spend the night here today. I parked my car in a spot near the police booth, checked all the doors and windows, and sorted out the things I bought from the convenience store. After a quick wash, I lay on the bed, listening to the sound of rain outside, and drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, it was 4 in the morning and the rain was still pouring down. The weather forecast had changed from yesterday's sunny prediction to a torrential downpour, and the forecast for the following days was the same. I shook off my drowsiness, washed up, ate a can of 8 treasure porridge, and decided to set off again. As the sky gradually brightened, I finally entered another province. The rain had eased up a lot, and I started driving faster and faster. Around noon, I pulled into a large service area, filled up the tank, had a bowl of beef noodles, and ordered 2 McDonald's real-life return buckets to take back to the car. While driving, I would occasionally eat a chicken wing. I traveled over 1,000 kilometers on the road and didn't come across a single city where it wasn't raining. By the time it got dark again, I was already camping out for the night. I picked another service area to stop at. It was finally just a light rain here. After getting out of the car and having a bowl of dandan noodles, I overheard some pedestrians saying that the rain here had only just eased up a little. From yesterday until this morning, it was pouring rain. Some parts of the city were flooded, and several sections of the highway were temporarily closed. As I listened, I quietly opened my weather app and checked a few tourist cities I'd visited and added before. Good grief, this is ridiculous. It's raining everywhere. Did the sky spring a leak or something? After finishing my noodles and getting back in the car, my phone suddenly rang. When I looked at the screen, it was someone I knew, a college classmate. We were both the top liberal arts students in the city that year and both entered the journalism department at our university. He had a crush on me in college, and even after I turned him down, he still remained a bright and upright young man. When he found out I gave up my guaranteed graduate spot, he even tried to persuade me otherwise. "Hello Shen Yu, it's Gu Xian. How have you been lately?" "Yeah, I'm doing well. What do you need?" "That's good. It's nothing major really. I just received some news that something might happen soon. If you can take some time off work, try to do so. Stock up on supplies at home and try to go out as little as possible, or not at all." Given Wei Yixing's workplace, he was bound to know some inside information before others. Besides, his father was a high-ranking city official, and his mother seemed to be the chief researcher at some institute. Is there going to be another outbreak? I'm not sure. This matter is still confidential, so I can't say much more. You must remember to stock up on supplies and go out as little as possible. No, it's best not to go out at all. In a few days, the government will also issue related warnings, and that might trigger a wave of panic buying. You really need to prepare early. I didn't tell Wei Yixing that I had just sold my house and now only had an RV as my place to stay. If it were just a minor issue, Wei Yixing probably wouldn't have reminded me so seriously and repeatedly. But if something like the pandemic that year really happens, service industries like hotels and restaurants might shut down, and most tourist attractions will likely close as well. If I end up living in the RV for a long time, I'm afraid these dozen or so boxes of self-heating hot pot and 8 treasure porridge won't be of much use. I really do need to stock up on more supplies. Thank you for the reminder. I'll be careful. You take care and protect yourself too. Frequent beeping warning tones came from the other end of the phone. Wei Yixing suddenly started speaking faster. Shen Yu, take care of yourself. When all this is over, I want to see you again. The call was abruptly cut off. After the call was disconnected, I tried calling again, but when I couldn't get through, I didn't keep trying. I just sent a text message instead. If an outbreak of that scale really does happen, and I make it through safely because of his warning, I should at least meet him once and thank him in person. Time was running out, so I started up the RV and headed toward the nearest highway entrance. After driving for nearly an hour in the rain, I finally reached the nearest big city. Even though it was already past 9, the city's nightlife was still bustling. Along the way, I had already planned out my next steps. I originally set out on this road trip to camp and relax, so I decided to extend my journey even further. I had planned to buy camping supplies slowly after arriving at my destination, but now, since I might face sudden quarantines at any time, I figured I should prepare everything thoroughly in advance. It was close to closing time, so there weren't many people in the supermarket, but since I had a lot to buy, after entering, I went straight to a store clerk and explained my intentions. After hearing my request, his eyes lit up.
A big customer! Wait a moment! Ma'am, this is a big customer!
A slightly older female clerk heard the commotion and came over.
Sorry, miss. I'm just working here for the summer and can't handle this. Let me get our manager for you.
After the manager arrived, the young girl quickly explained the situation to her. The manager smiled at me and calmly asked what I needed. I told her that I was preparing for a long road trip and needed to buy rice, flour, grains, oil, easily stored fruits and vegetables, dried goods, vegetarian food, camping gear, and essential women's personal items. I wanted enough for half a year, and I also needed them to send someone to help me load the car. This is a tourist city, with visitors coming and going. Although requests like mine aren't common, the manager had encountered them before, so she agreed calmly. We roughly discussed the items I needed, and during the process, the manager even helped me fill in some gaps. Then she called over 2 young men to fetch the boxed goods I needed from the warehouse, while she herself brought over 2 shopping carts, one for each of us, and helped me pick out the other miscellaneous items from the shelves. The young lady took the opportunity to promote. Miss, our hot pot base and bobo chicken seasoning are both really famous here. I've cooked quite a few at home myself. They're truly delicious. Plus, when you're outdoors, there's no ingredient that a pack of hot pot base can't handle. Would you like to get some?
You make a good point, but I haven't tried this brand before, so I'm not sure which flavor tastes the best. Could I trouble you to pick out a few flavors for me and mix up enough for 2 boxes? Thank you.
No need to thank me. No need. This is my job after all. After checking out, the manager led 2 young guys to help me carry everything to the parking lot. All the items were sorted by usage, order, and category, packed into boxes as tightly as possible, with the item names written on the boxes before being sealed up. By the time everything was packed, the calories from the bowl of egg noodles I had at the service area had already been burned off. My stomach was growling with hunger, and thinking that I had delayed the manager and his team from getting off work, I took the opportunity to invite them to have a late-night snack together. But the manager declined, saying they were supposed to work overtime today anyway, and there was another batch of goods to handle tonight. Since they still had work to do, of course I didn't insist. After they left, I locked the car doors and chose a hot pot restaurant filled with locals and their accents. I picked a corner seat and ordered a table full of dishes. After eating and drinking my fill, I booked a room at a hotel near the plaza. After washing up, I lay in bed tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. I took out my phone and remembered the day my mum caused a scene at my company. That was the first time I'd seen her in years since she abandoned me. My original name was Yang Buhui, a name given by my mother. My biological father's surname is Yang. He used to be a thug. My mother was a top student, but she fell in love with him in high school. She ignored her family's objections and got together with my father, learned to smoke and drink, and had a relationship with him in her 2nd year of high school. She hid the relationship, and after her 18th birthday, she secretly took the family savings and eloped with my father before the college entrance exam. By then, she was already 4 months pregnant. She left a letter stating that she left of her own free will, making it impossible for my grandparents to call the police to search for her. My grandfather already had a heart condition, and in his anger, he suffered an attack. When my grandmother went home to get money and discovered the savings had been stolen, she had to borrow money everywhere, which delayed treatment, and my grandfather unfortunately passed away. Although my grandmother reported the theft to the police because my mother used a false identity, the case was eventually dropped. My parents took the stolen money and went to Yuchang. My father had a knack for business and made money quickly. Because my mother was affected by epilepsy, she named me Yang Buhui. Since I reached the legal age for marriage, I have never been registered in the household registry. When I was 3, my father was busy with his business, and my mother, feeling lonely, developed feelings for one of her mahjong friends. On his way back to catch them in the act, my father died in a car accident. After my father died, all the property went to my mother. When she was discussing marriage with her mahjong friend, she saw me as a burden and a stain. She didn't want to raise me, so she took me back to our hometown. After giving me my grandmother's address, she hurriedly left. I tried to chase after her, but failed. A passerby took me to the police station and they contacted my grandmother to pick me up. My grandmother was very cold to me, but she did her best to raise and educate me. The year I was admitted to college, my grandmother passed away from liver cancer caused by long-term depression, leaving her savings and property to me. I used the savings to finish college. After I started working, the old house was demolished. I received compensation and worked hard to save money in the city where I worked. 2 years later, I bought a house outright. Now my life is stable. The day I received his call was August 4th. After so many years, I still recognized his voice immediately and felt nothing but utter disgust. He first tried to play the emotional card, but when that didn't work, he revealed his true intentions. He found out about the demolition of the old house and claimed to be the primary heir. He accused me of not informing him back then, demanded that I return the compensation money with interest, and even asked for the apartment I bought in the city where I work. I told him that before she passed away, Grandma had already given me the house and savings as a gift, and he had no right to inherit them. He immediately changed tactics, claiming that I had a younger brother, and that if Grandma had known she had a grandson, she would have left the inheritance to him. He demanded that I transfer the house to my brother, who was about to go to the capital for school. I made it clear that if there was an issue, we should resolve it through legal channels and then hung up the phone. However, he did not give up. Not long after, he barged directly into the media company where I worked, shouting and making a scene in the office area, throwing a tantrum in public and demanding the property. My boss told me to take a leave of absence to deal with my personal affairs. Witnessing his disgraceful behavior, combined with my long-standing professional burnout and underlying self-destructive tendencies, I decided to resign. I immediately communicated with my boss, proactively handed over the unreported news materials and work accounts I had, and promised not to work in the same industry within the year. My boss readily agreed and privately transferred me a sum of money. There was a text message from him on my phone. "Don't think that just because you don't go to the office and are hiding at home, I can't do anything to you. Just you wait. I'll make sure all your neighbors know that you're an ungrateful wretch who doesn't even respect your own mother." I deleted the message, glanced at the time on my phone. It was already 2:14. I tossed the phone onto the bedside table, curled up under the covers, and drifted off into a groggy sleep. When I woke up and checked my phone, it was only 6 o'clock. All traces of sleepiness had vanished. I checked out of the hotel, went downstairs, and carried 2 bags of ghost buns toward the parking lot. It wasn't until I drove out of the underground parking lot that I realized the rain outside had gotten even heavier. There were hardly any pedestrians on the street, but the sound of car horns blaring rose and fell in waves. Back on the highway, I still couldn't pick up speed. The visibility in this torrential rain was just too poor. By 7 or 8 in the evening, I was only 2 kilometers away from the highway exit toll station. I relaxed a bit and took the opportunity to turn on the radio. The government had already started urging people to prepare supplies and stay home for quarantine. While waiting in line at the toll station, I glanced at the back of my car. I didn't feel nervous. Given my current stockpile, even if I had to quarantine, I wouldn't have to worry about food or drink. After getting off the highway, I slowly drove into the city. I hardly saw anyone wearing a mask on the road, so it seemed the virus hadn't reached here yet. I felt relieved and planned to stay here for the night to get some proper rest. I found a parking lot, and the place I settled down was a cultural tourism city. Naturally, when you arrive somewhere new, you have to try the local specialties. I ordered a mushroom hot pot and added some red onions and delicious porcini mushrooms. The waiter brought the pot over and repeatedly reminded me, "Don't stir it with a spoon ahead of time, and don't taste it yet. After the pot comes to a boil, cook it for another 20 minutes. Then, as usual, they didn't give me any chopsticks. I responded and started absent-mindedly playing with my phone. My mom sent me a bunch more text messages, this time even more frantic. "I've already filed a lawsuit against you. I'm going to sue you for illegally seizing property and being unfilial." I read each one and deleted it right after. After finishing them, I had no intention of replying to her. None of her affairs have anything to do with me. What she did to me back then, even if it doesn't constitute abandonment, definitely means she failed to fulfill her duty to support me. Even if she really did sue me and won, at most she could only get a few $100 a month in minimum child support from me. The mushrooms were cooked, so I started eating. Honestly, when poisonous mushrooms aren't poisonous, they're really something else. When I walked out of the restaurant, I felt like my stomach was about to burst. I held up my umbrella as I left the shop, turned on the walking navigation, and planned to go to a pharmacy 100 meters away to buy some digestive tablets. Unexpectedly, I witnessed a mushroom poisoning incident from afar. I could only see from a distance as one person, screaming, lunged at another, chasing them through the rain, one fleeing, one pursuing, until there was no escape. People around were shouting to call 120, while I quickened my pace with my umbrella, moving away from the scene and heading toward the pharmacy guided by my walking navigation. When I got to the pharmacy, I bought some digestive tablets and took a few on the spot. Then, thinking that I might be quarantined once I arrived at the campsite, I also picked up some everyday medicines just in case. Seeing that the digestive tablets weren't taking effect quickly, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, so I decided to drive through the night to the campsite. It was only after I got back on the highway that I realized something was wrong. A long line of cars had formed at the highway exit, heading out of the city. Why are there so many cars at this hour? Why did so many cars suddenly appear, all heading out of the city? Even the lanes waiting to get through were lined up with cars. I took a moment to check my phone and saw that the local authorities had just announced regional quarantine measures. The place where I had just eaten had already been designated as a quarantine zone. I couldn't help but feel relieved. Thank goodness I left a bit earlier, or I would have been stuck in the parking lot under quarantine. Even though the rain was still pouring down, I kept pressing the accelerator, speeding up, until suddenly, not far ahead, a car seemed to lose control and skid straight into the guardrail. Several cars rear-ended each other in succession. I gently braked and slowed down, passing by the scene, and instinctively turned my head to look. In that instant, I couldn't help but shiver. I actually saw the woman in the passenger seat biting the neck of the person in the driver's seat. After witnessing 2 incidents of neck biting in one day, there's no way I could still naively believe this was just a symptom of mushroom poisoning. In an instant, a possibility flashed through my mind. Could it be? Wei Yixing told me to stock up and stay home not because a pandemic was about to break out, but because he knew the zombie outbreak was about to spiral out of control. With one hand on the steering wheel, I kept driving, while with the other I quickly picked up my phone and called Wei Yixing, but no one answered. I used my phone to bypass the firewall and open a foreign browser, and was met with an overwhelming flood of zombie outbreak videos. I knew the original plan was no longer viable. In this situation, I absolutely couldn't let myself be quarantined with a group of strangers. I had enough survival supplies in my car. I couldn't risk testing human nature. As I drove, I kept swiping through the map with my fingers, searching for a new place to stay. After exiting the fork in the road, most people took the provincial highway, heading toward the national highway and other main roads. But after following them for a while, I decisively turned onto another muddy country lane. The GPS kept telling me to turn around. The road got narrower and narrower, and there wasn't a single street light. Even when the navigation showed there was no road ahead, I kept inching forward. I knew that after this stretch of muddy road, there would be an abandoned concrete road ahead, and beyond that was the protected area. Decades ago, this place used to be a hunting ground. Later, due to the severe impact of overhunting, the hunting ground was shut down to protect local species and the ecosystem, and this area was designated as a protected zone. I drove forward without hesitation, crushing the weeds beneath my car as I headed into the dark jungle. From time to time, large rocks tumbled down in front of and behind my vehicle. Originally, I had planned to refuel after getting on the highway the next day, but unexpected situations on the road made me forget about it. Now that the fuel gauge light is on, I have no choice but to find a suitable place to stop before I run out of gas, so I keep driving deeper in. I kept driving all the way to the edge of the dense forest, and the car finally used up its last drop of fuel, coming to a stop right there. I got out of the car with the rain tarp, spread it completely over the vehicle, and secured it tightly in place. After finishing all this, I got back in the car and closed the door. Fortunately, even though the car is out of gas, the onboard living power system is independently powered by solar energy. I took a hot shower, worried about catching a cold, then made myself a cup of cold medicine, drank it all, and collapsed onto the bed, falling into a deep sleep. I slept incredibly well and didn't wake up until 9 in the morning. Glancing outside, I saw the rain tarp covering half the car with water streaming down, and my phone had lost signal. There were still 8 zongzi left in the fridge. While the car still had power, I cooked them all in one pot and hung them up, since it's said that this way they won't spoil easily. I also unplugged the fridge, since I don't know when the rain will stop, and I need to conserve the battery power. To save electricity, lately the only hot food I can have each day is self-heating hot pot. Eating while looking out the window, I can't even imagine what it's like outside now. Was I just overreacting and the situation has already been brought under control? Or has the zombie apocalypse really begun? If the authorities had known in advance, the country should have been prepared and the situation would have been brought under control quickly, right? The rain finally stopped, a whole month later. The plateau sun burned hot on my face, and I breathed in deeply, gulping the air. I untied all the knots, pulled down the tarp, and sunlight filtered through the treetops onto the solar panels on the roof of the car. After eating, I finally caught my breath. I cleaned the toilet and tidied up all the trash that had piled up in the car over the past month and a half of eating and drinking. The next day, I finally had some free time to explore the surroundings. After the heavy rain, there were a lot of mushrooms on the mountain, but there were only a few types I could recognize and felt safe enough to cook and eat myself. Only when I was lucky enough to come across species that were hard to confuse with others would I pick some. After the weather cleared up, the car's solar panels could store up to 3 kilowatt-hours of electricity every day. It was cool in the mountains, so I didn't need to use the air conditioner, and that was enough to meet my daily needs. With extra electricity to spare, I remembered that I still had a drone stored in the luggage compartment under my car. This was the M300 I bought when I first started working. I dug the drone out from the corner and spent a few days organizing and checking my supplies. Now, after nearly 2 months of living without resupply, I've realized that even if I ration my stockpile, it will only last me at most half a year. So while I was taking inventory, I not only took out the drone, but also pulled out the tent, the entrenching shovel for setting up the tent, and even the fishing rod, which I wouldn't need in the mountains. I gathered all the leftover self-heating hot pot containers, cleaned them thoroughly, then used a shovel to fill them with soil to serve as planting pots. I cut the sprouting potatoes into pieces and planted them in the containers, and separated and planted each garlic clove as well. I used the leftover cotton towel from washing my face, moistened it, and placed the seeds from dried chili peppers on it indoors to encourage sprouting. As for the ginger, I simply found a spot where the soil was loose and planted it directly, then picked up some stones to form a circle around it as a marker. Another 10 days or so later, my chili plants sprouted 2 leaves after being planted in the soil, and the potatoes were also transplanted into the land I had cultivated over the past few days. After the drone had drained the power from my battery and was fully charged, I carried it on my back and climbed toward the mountaintop. I started a test flight in an open area. I circled along the mountain road for dozens of kilometers, and for this stretch, I didn't see any other vehicles or obvious traces of people. After flying a bit further, the video transmission started to become intermittent, and the battery drained quickly. To prevent the drone from running out of power and not making it back in time, I started to bring it back. It was at that moment that I witnessed a horrifying scene. On the highway, there were clusters of crashed vehicles, and aimless zombies wandered between the cars, chasing after the sound of the drone, running as if they were just as fast as living people. I couldn't believe that scenes from movies were actually happening in real life. During these more than 2 months in the mountains, although I had prepared for the worst, I was still hoping that the zombie outbreak could be brought under control quickly. Just the footage captured on this stretch of highway was already so tragic. I really can't imagine what things must be like now in densely populated cities. I flew the drone in a circle before bringing it back, and at the same time confirmed that there were no obvious signs of human activity within several kilometers around me. On the way back, I picked wild vegetables and fruits that I could find. I need to take advantage of the good weather to dry and store as much food as possible. When winter comes, gathering food probably won't be so easy anymore. I'm trying not to use those canned or vacuum-packed foods anymore, saving them as emergency supplies for winter or unexpected situations. My grandmother did her best to nurture me. When I was a child, I thought archery looked cool while watching the Olympics, so she sent me for professional training. There are still bows and arrows I bought before in the RV. After I started hunting and gathering, my days became busy. When I return to camp, I also have to gather firewood that might be needed for the winter. I set up a tarp in the woods behind the trailer, chopped the collected wood into suitable sizes, and stacked it behind the trailer. I moved a lot of stones, and mixing them with soil under the tarp, built a windproof outdoor stove. After drying the wild vegetables, I store them in plastic bags inside the tent. The day I realized the weather was getting colder, after eating, I noticed a thin layer of frost had formed on the plants outside. I took out my phone, which I hadn't checked in a long time, and charged it. Only then did I realize that today was the start of winter. Back in my hometown, we always eat dumplings on the first day of winter. There was still a bit of flour left from an opened bag, so I made dumplings with it, and after eating, I went out hunting. After walking about 2 or 3 kilometers, I finally spotted a few upright feathers among the withered mugwort. After a few chirps, I followed the trail of blood and found the prey, which had flapped along for over 10 meters with my arrow still in it. I carried the chicken toward the small pond, planning to take care of it nearby. When I scooped up water, I realized that it was actually a bit difficult to reach the dirty water from where I used to stand. The water level in the pond had actually dropped. It finally dawned on me that after that heavy rain, there hadn't been a single rainfall in this area since. I comforted myself thinking, heaven never seals off all exits, things won't get so bad that there's no way out. But the next day, I still got up early to prepare for any possible disasters and started setting animal traps around the area. For the next several days, I was busy cutting wood, checking the traps, and using the wood to build a simple smokehouse on the cleared land. All the animals I caught were processed and smoked into jerky. As the weather grew colder and my fingers started to feel stiff, the cockpit and co-pilot seats were already filled with all kinds of jerky I had been smoking day and night during this period. I had used up all the plastic bags in the tent that were meant for storing dried wild vegetables and mushrooms. I didn't stop for the entire winter. Although I knew there would be large animals in this reserve, the place where I am now is actually on the edge, so I hadn't encountered any in the past few months since I arrived. But I didn't expect the first large animal I would encounter to be a wild boar. It was one thing for it to drink from the pool where I fetch water and cook, but it even tried to poop in it. I originally just wanted to scare it off, but my arrow accidentally hit its belly. It broke one of my precious arrows, of which I only have 12, and then charged at me like a mad boar. To protect myself, I shot a second arrow at its eye, hoping it would calm down a bit. But it kept ramming the tree I had climbed up. I've already sacrificed 2 arrows, so I can't walk away empty-handed. You know, wild boars can eat people. Today, in this forest, only one of us could survive, so I turned it from a wild boar into a porcupine. On New Year's Eve, with a sincere heart, I launched the drone once again. Here's some good news. At some point, the vehicles blocking the road had already been cleared. 2 pieces of bad news. For some unknown reason, there were no cars on the highway, and during my observation period, no vehicles passed by on any of the nearby main roads either. The zombies haven't been wiped out, and a few of them were wandering on the dirt road I took to get here. The dirt road has already dried and hardened, making it easy to walk on. There's no telling when the zombies might come up the mountain in search of food. After all, humans aren't the only creatures with flesh and blood. But seeing those wandering zombies reminded me that my cracked windshield is extremely fragile. If I were attacked, not even by zombies, but by any wild animal that's a bit larger, it could easily be shattered. So I decided to cut down trees within a 1-kilometer radius. That tree cutting ended up lasting more than 20 days. I built a curtain wall around the RV using a crisscrossed structure for reinforcement, leaving only the side with the door open for access. The water level in the pond dropped by another 20 centimeters. I also tried to look for other water sources, but aside from a few tiny streams that barely moistened the soil and couldn't even form puddles, I couldn't find any other sources nearby. By mid-April, it was still a bit cold. When I carried my bucket to the pond to fetch water, I saw snowflakes falling from the sky, one after another, like someone was sprinkling salt. In the blink of an eye, the ground was covered in white. It's unbelievable. It's snowing. After it snowed, the solar panels got covered, so the outdoor stove finally came in handy. I have no idea how long this snow will last, but fortunately, chopping firewood and replenishing water are part of my daily routine. Roughly calculated, my supplies should last for 2 months. I don't believe this snow will keep falling until late June. I fumbled for my phone and saw that I had 60% battery left. I don't know if no one has a signal, or if it's just me who doesn't have reception inside the reserve. This weather is just absurd. It's already June, mid-June, and it's still snowing. The electricity has long been out, so I started living according to the sun's schedule. I even had to start eating the supplies I'd been saving since the rainy season. By the 3rd day without firewood, I gave up. I stopped shoveling the snow, opened the window for some air, glanced outside to see it was still snowing, and then just went back to bed. When I got hungry, I'd just slice off a piece of ham and eat it raw. When I was thirsty, I'd take a sip of mineral water. When I was down to half a bottle of mineral water and just a ham bone, the snow finally stopped. Holding a shovel, I looked around in a daze. In the end, I started digging from where I could step, and after clearing a path, I began rescuing my outdoor kitchen. I barely paused for a moment as I ran to gather branches, but the ones I dug out from the snow wouldn't burn at all. I had no choice but to tie them together with rope and hang them up in the air to dry. The solar panels finally saw sunlight again, and I charged my phone. When I turned it on, it was already the end of July, just a few days away from my 1-year anniversary of coming up the mountain. A few days after the anniversary, the zombie I had seen before the new year finally wandered up here. I never thought that even after escaping to a mountain over 2,000 meters high, I still couldn't avoid having to kill a zombie. I followed the path it had taken and looked around but didn't see any of its companions. It must have gotten separated from them. From then on, no matter what I was doing, I became much more vigilant, always afraid that a zombie might suddenly jump out from somewhere. At the end of August, the drone finally had enough power stored up. I piloted it on a patrol, found a lone zombie, memorized its approximate location, and then flew it toward the highway. It was so hopeless, there still wasn't any traffic on the road. I started patrolling frequently with the drone, but its operational range was limited. The farthest it could capture was that highway. By October, the few zombies I had seen before had all been neutralized, so I gave up flying the drone to check the highway. Because I encountered a new crisis, the water level in the pond dropped drastically. I started exploring along the path where the mountain flood had flowed, bringing the drone with me, trying to find a new water source. I did find one, but since I couldn't move my camp, that river didn't mean much to me. The walking distance was just too far. I also started considering the possibility of migrating, but out in the wild, I really didn't have the courage to abandon my RV, not to mention I still had a plantation here. Winter had arrived, and the drone could still spot water in the riverbed down in the valley. Although the river had narrowed a lot, I had no other choice. There was nothing left in the pool but mud. I started taking inventory of my supplies, packing up, and getting ready to migrate down the mountain. I strapped on my food and tools, grabbed my water bucket, and set off, following the flood path down the mountain. Suddenly, I heard a loud rumbling from above. A row of planes trailed long, colorful smoke as they flew over my head, and beside them, the words, "The lockdown is lifted," gradually appeared, fading in from nothing. At that moment, I didn't yet know that this scene was appearing in skies all across the country. The authorities were using this way to tell everyone who had survived alone that the disaster was over. I ran back to the car, grabbed my drone, and flew it toward the highway in the opposite direction of the river. The road was open. I couldn't help but cry. It turned out I was afraid of being alone too, that I also longed to return to the crowd. Once again, I shouldered my backpack. This time I walked toward the highway. I returned to the city. This once bustling tourist city was now visibly desolate. The railways and roads were still under repair, and all flights had been temporarily taken over by the authorities. Each survivor was offered one free ride, valid only once in the short term, to the city of their choice. I boarded a plane back to the capital. I was going to keep a promise made before the apocalypse. Even after I got off the plane, I suddenly felt a sense of trepidation, like being close to home. "Shen Yu!" The voice from my memory came through. I looked up abruptly and saw Wei Yixing standing on the other side of the exit railing, waving at me. When he saw me look up, he ran towards me as fast as he could. I don't know why, but I started running too. We walked through the crowd and hugged each other tightly. "Shen Yu, welcome home." "Wei Yixing, I'm back."